Good morning. Happy Tuesday, September 19th, 2023. I'm Greg, and this is the Daily Bible Wrap-Up. I like to talk about the readings, like to start the day in the Word. Hopefully you get something out of this. It's just all a matter of spending a little bit of time to try to understand what God has told us and what He's telling us. Start out today, our readings are Psalm 108. We continue there, verses 6 through 13, Galatians 4:21 through 5:6, and Isaiah 44:24 through 46. If you forget what I just said, if you haven't already noticed, right down over here, boom. That's where you've got the readings for the day, assuming that I put that in right before I started recording. I have been known to mess that up. So going to Psalm 108, this is the Psalm of David. It continues. One line stood out to me, and that's verse 7. God has promised this by his holiness. It's an interesting way to put it. I looked in King James, which of course is a little bit closer as far as translation word to word. It is God hath spoken in his holiness. Now, both versions seem to indicate that God's holiness is an essential character aspect of God. Seems kind of obvious, I understand, but bear with me. Do we always treat God with the respect that that essential part of his character really deserves? How often do we just turn to God when we want or need something? What kind of relationship is that? Now, holiness refers to absolute purity, separateness, and sanctity of God. We should learn of and understand his character if we are to seek to communicate with him. Again, I do think that one of the issues that we have is that we kind of just treat God as this there if we want to talk to him type deal, but otherwise we don't invite him in our lives. He wants to be a part of our lives. He wants to be a part of all of our lives all the time. New Testament, we're in Galatians 4, verse 21 is where we pick up the story. Paul infers that those who, quote, want to live under the law do not know what the law actually says. He explains that Abraham's two sons, one from a slave wife and one from his freeborn wife, and that the former, Hagar, represents Mount Sinai, the law that enslaved them. The other, Sarah, remember the story, represents the heavenly Jerusalem in freedom. And we're all children of that promise. Yet some are persecuting the Galatian church members at this time by those who want them to keep the law. This is what Paul is addressing. Now, Paul explains again that we are children of the free women. In other words, not subject to keeping the law. Now, I believe he stresses this in encouragement to stay the course. Remember what I said yesterday. Perhaps maybe they were trying to cover all bases, if you will. Galatians 5, Paul continues to tell them that Christ has made them and us truly free. I added the us. Circumcision won't find favor with God, but, quote from verse 5, we who live by the Spirit eagerly want to receive by faith the righteousness God has promised to us. Remember, I sometimes close by saying, my prayer for you is that you walk by the Spirit. Because when we do that, we eagerly want to receive by faith the righteousness God has promised to us. We're asking for him to intervene in our lives, keep us away from temptation. Or not necessarily away, but from being affected, from acting on temptation. He closes this reading of the day with a simple summary. Quote, what is important is faith expressing itself in love. What is important is faith expressing itself in love. A lot of times people can see that you're a Christian, not by words, but by acts. Changes you. Being a Christian, it changes you. And sometimes people will come up to you and say, hey, what is it about you anyway? What's different? Well, that's that faith expressing itself in love. People see that. Old Testament, we are now in Isaiah 44, in the middle of it. We're actually close to the end of Isaiah 44 and verse 24. Isaiah says, the Lord says that he is the center of all, and the creator of all, rather. He exposed false prophets and he carries out the predictions of his prophets. Sorry, my handwriting a little bit hard to read. Isaiah 45 continues. It's a message about Cyrus. You may remember Cyrus, king of Babylon, the Lord's anointed one, as he's referred to here. He tells Cyrus he has called him and equipped him for battle. God called Cyrus his anointed one before he was born. He is the founder of the Persian Empire and allowed the exiled Jews to return to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. We've heard of the story of Cyrus before. This chapter is that prophecy. Quote, verse 13, I will raise up Cyrus to fulfill my righteous purpose, and I will guide his actions. He will restore my city and free my captured people without seeking a reward. And then another message that the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, and the Sabeans will be ruled by the Israelis. Now, my Bible titles this passage "Future Conversion of Gentiles," so I think that's what that's referring to. Verse 23, quote, every knee will bend to me, and every tongue will declare allegiance to me. We've heard that before too. All the future generations of Israel will be justified. Isaiah 46 begins with the comparison of Babylon's false gods to the Lord, who, quote, verse 3, cared for you since you were born. Yes, I cared for you. I carried you before you were born. You notice that idols can't answer. Is Isaiah saying this in verse 7? The Lord's saying that he is ready to save Jerusalem, but the people are stubborn. So that's it for today. Hope you have a wonderful day. And as we talked about today, prayer for you is that you walk by the Spirit. Take care.